Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, season 2.
Boom, boom, boom.
That was like a little bit of subdued excitement from Bob Stewart, but Chad, like always, Chad showed up big for season 2 of Win, Make, Give. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ben Kinney, joined with the two gentlemen I've already mentioned, so we will not be redundant. Chad, what are we studying in season 2?
Ben, season 2 is all about winning.
Winning, hashtag winning,
Yes.
Winners, won.
All the winning
First
ways
place,
you can
not
say it.
second place.
Yes.
Leather medals, participation medals, Bob Stewart.
No, we don't do those.
We are studying winners, the people, men and women who have won,
And the companies.
the companies who have won in present day and in history. We also study losers
Yes.
because every great winner was also a
Loser.
That's right. And the present company is not excluded. I can't think of a room full of more losers than the room I'm in today, ladies and
right.
gentlemen.
That might be the nicest thing you've said to Bob all week.
Yeah, I like Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth struck out more than he ever hit home runs, and he's still a legend. And ladies and gentlemen, Bob Stewart and Chad Himes, they are very much legends in their own minds. Last episode, we dug into the psychological effects of losing, the physical effects of losing, and a short multi-step plan on what to do when you lose.
Yes.
How do you know the difference between losing and have lost,
Yes.
right? Now, today, Chad Himes, we are going to talk about
The benefits of losing, Ben.
What?
Yes.
So you're saying I should like set out to lose?
I'm not saying you
Okay.
should
but,
set out
but
to
I might
lose.
one day.
But as Ben even talked about in the last episode, when you lose, there are still ways to walk away from that successfully. So we're going to focus on some of those things right here and the lessons that come from losing.
somebody said once, sometimes you're losing so slowly you think you're winning.
Yeah.
That was a very impactful statement. And I think about that a lot. And Bob Stewart, you and I have talked about that a lot of you think you're winning, but you aren't paying attention and you're actually wake up one day and you aren't just losing, you've actually lost. That's sometimes I feel like I'm healthy and I wake up one day and my pants don't fit.
Yeah. You know, a lot of that comes from a lack of accountability, right? A lack of accounting. We've had businesses, Ben, where we weren't tracking the right numbers or watching the right things. And like you said, you feel like you're going in every day and putting a bunch of work into that business and things are happening, but you look up later and you're like, oh my gosh, we've slowly been losing.
Yeah. And in that process of losing, we have to, number one, learn something from it no matter what. And we have to decide when we quit and when we persevere, which reminds me of the song, You Gotta Know When to Hold 'Em.
When to hold them,
You gotta know when to fold 'em.
when to fold them.
Dave, can we walk away or run from this?
Oh, well played, Bob
We
Stewart.
should-
Well
we
played.
should
You know, and
run.
Disney Plus will now have all the Muppet episodes where you can find Kenny singing on the train to the Muppets. That's where I remember the lyrics from the song too. So just a side note, go find that episode of The Muppet Show.
If you're still listening and you haven't just canceled out of this podcast, we appreciate you. Thank you for sticking with us. Chad, we are going to jump in to the lessons of losing.
Yeah, you know, in the first one, Ben, it's a personal one really to me. I mean, everybody can learn from this, but losing lets us know why we want to win.
What do you mean?
Okay, so if I had a lot of clarity years ago in my life, I got to tell you, I amassed a whopping amount of debt, right? I mean, I was up to, forget my eyeballs, I was drowning in debt at one point in my life. And I always thought I was actually good with money. And that was only because I was good at making money. But I lost overall. I wasn't good at how to keep my money. I wasn't good how to manage my money. I wasn't good how to run my money.
Probably
and all
weren't
of that
accounting for your money very
or
well.
accounting for my money, any of it. I was horrible with it. And it forced me into a position of bankruptcy. I mean, I was living in your basement at one point. It was the best I could afford at that price.
That's true, ladies and gentlemen. He did live in my basement.
I did. And I had to file bankruptcy. It was so bad. And I mean, I thank you for all the lessons that came along with it, and I thank Nita for the lessons. She refused to marry me until it was over and done with on the bankruptcy, and that motivated me to get it done. But here's the thing, losing like that let me know why I wanted to win, and I've been debt-free every day since.
It reminds me of the 2008 economic real estate crisis, since we kind of came from the real estate industry.
Yep.
I woke up in 2010, like you, with a negative net worth and no money in my bank account, except for the amount of money that I had left to either pay my assistant's salary or my mortgage payment.
Right.
And you guys would know her as Jillian Snell, the host of the 15-point plan, along with Chad Himes, which you guys should check out that podcast, by the way, just launched the other day. I had to make the tough decision. Do you pay salary? Do you pay your mortgage? But really what I was thinking, Bob Stewart, is what in the hell had I been doing working so hard for the last 10, 12 years only to wake up and have nothing? Like I thought I was winning, and you wake up one day and you lost. And what I learned from that was never going to happen to me again. I'm not going to get myself into a position where finances, like my family, right, where it becomes a stressor or a problem. And I like this first one, Chad. Losing lets us know why we want to win. Losing puts us in positions that we may decide that we never want to get into again. Right. Another example would be, the guy that has a heart attack because they take poor care of their body, right? And he wakes up one day and they goes out and makes changes and ends up looking like Chad Himes, a lean, mean, muscle rippling machine.
Current Chad Himes. Let's go back to the living in your basement Chad Himes again.
Not the previous medium husky Chad Himes. But it gives you a reason. I was reading last weekend, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by Viktor Frankl, which everybody should read this book multiple times. It starts off, Victor is a psychiatrist, a doctor, but the first part of the book is going through the years of his life that he spent in Auschwitz. Right. Is that the correct way to pronounce it? Auschwitz. In a concentration camp. And the stories he tells are horrific. But he learned through that experience that he truly wanted to live. He found meaning in his life. Well, in the book, he also talks about his job as a psychiatrist, and he meets with people often that are depressed or suicidal. And at one point he said, "Bob, why don't you just kill yourself?" And these people come in there and depressed and say, "I'm suicidal, I'm depressed." And he just flat out looks at them and says, "Well, why don't you do it?" And most often they come back with an answer like, "Well, I wouldn't do that to my wife," or "I wouldn't do that to my kids," or "My kids depend on me," or "There's things that I still want to do in life." And he uses that to pinpoint and says, no matter how low you are, no matter how much you feel like you've been losing, to kind of bring it back to our episode, you do have purpose. Always. You just identified it, that those children or that thing you wanted to do or that thing that you haven't accomplished. Yep. And I think that's important in this journey of lessons we can learn from losing. Another one is, why do you want to win? What do you want to accomplish still in your life or in your business or in your relationships? Let's go to another one, Chad.
Okay, number 2, it's losing helps us overcome fear. Bob, you were talking about this one with me before the episode as we were planning these out and kind of laying these out. Talk to us a little bit about how losing helps us overcome fear.
Well, a lot of times people aren't even going to play the game, right? Or get into that thing because they're worried about what the outcome's going to be. And I think the reality is anything we do, we're probably not going to do very well or the best we could the first time we do it. Right. But oftentimes just taking that first step is going to give us that realization that, look, if I lose it didn't kill me, right? It didn't bankrupt me. It didn't, it didn't embarrass me to the point I couldn't show my face at the office again. Or it makes us realize that it's not that bad, right? And ultimately out of that, we end up braver, right? Often we weren't even willing to play, but once we realize it's not going to kill us, then we're willing to get in the game and mix it up a lot more. I always think, Ben, of we do something in one of our businesses where we have people make 1,000 dials in a day. and we know that when they make 1,000 dials in the day, they're going to get rejected, sometimes viciously, right? For many of those 1,000 calls, right? 90% of those calls might end up being rejections, maybe even higher. But the reason we do it is because when they get done, they go, well, that wasn't too bad, right? I can go hit the standard daily now, which is much less than that, because I know that it's not going to kill me, right? I can do it.
Yeah,
Even though there's a bunch of losses in there.
You go call through 1,000 people in a day, you're going to get 998 FUs, go to hells, don't ever call me again, those sort of things. But you realize that you can endure it. I love that. All of the gentlemen in the room here, Chad and Bob and myself, we've spoken, we're not professional speakers by any means, but we've spoken in really large stages, 5,000, 10,000 people types of rooms. But what most people wouldn't know is the first time we did those things, for me, I remember I was sitting in my very first real estate office meeting, and they called on me to introduce myself, like, hey, stand up and introduce yourself. And I stood up in front of this room of probably 30 people who were not intimidating. They were super kind and welcoming in every way. And I was literally shaking, nervous, trying to say, my name is Ben, and I used to be a cable guy. And it was so difficult. I was scared. Yeah. And I left that situation with the feeling of that is not going to happen to me again. That pisses me off. So the next meeting, I rose my hand and I stood up and I said something. It was a little bit easier. Over time, I said, can I speak for 10 minutes and share something or teach something? And then over time, I remember the first time, Bob, that you and I did a live event together. It wasn't like a warm up. There was 300 to 500 people in a room where you and I had to do it for 8 hours straight and talk to individuals. We got over it. Yeah. By the 30th city that we did together, we frickin' got over it.
It was funny, out of that first big event. And for me, that was the first time I'd gone from, same with you, rooms of 30 to 50 to that room. And I think there was 450 people in that room that day. And at the end of that, you came over and we kind of had, hey, how do you think it went? And I said, actually, I thought it went pretty well. I don't know. And you said, next time, and we were going to have one of these 2 weeks later, you said, next time, you're going to give me $1 for every He's like, you said a million times today. And that was my loss out of that. I'm like, I thought I'd done pretty good, but, I'm not me, right? You're watching it. And you said, listen, the content. Just slow your brain down a second, right? But really focus on that, because it almost makes it feel like you don't know the content. But that was a little loss in there that forced me to turn around and say, look, I can do this. Like, I'm over the fear of it, because even in that scenario for me, I was shaky. I mean, that's a lot of people to be in front of.
Which brings us to another lesson from losing, which is losing creates growth. And Bob, what you're talking about is that it wasn't that you didn't do good, is that you and I could do better yeah. by perfecting how we speak and what we say and in what order we do it in. And, we mastered the PowerPoint presentation not because we needed it, but because it kept us on track time-wise, yeah. and it kept the content consistent so we could modify it and improve it. It wasn't always improv. But, Chad, losing creates growth. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, okay, Ben, so I'm going to go health again on you guys, as I often do, because we understand that muscles grow because we've pushed them to the point of failure and we've torn the fibers and without getting scientific on it, right? But we push our muscles to a point of loss. And that's how we actually create growth, as they repair themselves and they'll grow back stronger. So same thing on everything that we do, right? We push ourselves to a loss. We can analyze what the breakdown was, what we got right, what we got wrong, what we took away from it. And then before we know it, we're able to fix those things. And now we're stronger next time out, able to figure out what's the next thing that we're breaking as we're performing, presenting, growing, buying into whatever it is.
You're saying that building muscle is not really building muscle. Building muscle is actually healing torn muscles.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
I love that.
Scientifically, that is the truth.
You said a word in there, Chad. We analyze what went right and what went wrong, which is interesting, because in the last episode where we were talking about like what happens when we lose, we talked about how we rationalize that loss. Yep. And that's different than analyzing it, right? Like when we rationalize it, we're kind of placing the blame. We're looking for a reason why. Analyzing would say, okay, like let's look at that reason why, and then let's do something about it, right? Like what's the plan that we're going to put in place to actually have growth, right? Yeah. For Ben, it was something as simple as making me, you have to give him $1 every time I said right?
Correct. Or even just becoming aware of it's enough. Sometimes there are other speakers that I've sat there and I've tracked for them when they have their go-to phrase and stuff, and they'll come down and say, hey, I didn't say it the whole time. It's like, actually, you said it like 87 times, right? And they're like, wait, and now they become more aware of it. So it's always analyzing, right? Whether it's a race that we're running, because sports analogies are always so easy when it comes to winning and losing. Whether it's a business that failed, because Ben's built some amazing businesses. They weren't all amazing businesses, right? There has been failure that he's been able to learn from and turn into. We've been talking about buying stocks. Okay, how do we learn? Not every stock we buy is a win, but do we analyze why we pulled the trigger? Were we emotional on it? Were we whatever it was? Now we can figure out what research we didn't do for the win that we're going to take from that loss.
Ben, I look at our one of our main software businesses and kind of what happened to us in February and March as the pandemic was hitting. We were taking some losses, right? Like we had, I don't know what it was, 20% of our client base cancel in the course of 2 or 3 days. Like we were taking some serious losses, but we immediately started to analyze like, okay, right? We had to start analyzing our cost structure of our business. We had to start analyzing what we were paying people. And then we had to determine how did we get here, right? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? But there was a lot that we learned out of that loss. And I think all of us in this company, in that particular company would say today, we're in a much better position because of that loss.
Yeah, we had profit for the first time in that particular company. We doubled our size, but only because we got our butts kicked in February and March. That created that. It's an important thing about losing is when we look at winners, which we'll study a lot of them, you notice all the things they won at, and you forget all the things that they lost.
Right.
Winston Churchill's a great example of somebody who got his butt kicked many, many times and screwed up very often and lost a lot of things, but still won the greatest war in history.
Right. And one of the most famous people that would go along with it, and I won't even tell you who it is, you'll figure this out really quickly, right? Failed in business, then was defeated for the legislator, then failed again in another business opportunity, had a nervous breakdown, was defeated in an election, defeated running for Congress, defeated again running for Congress, defeated again running for Congress, defeated for the Senate, defeated attempting to be the vice president, defeated again for the Senate, and then finally was elected president. And that would be Abraham Lincoln.
What a loser.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the most celebrated people in our history probably would have been one of the greatest losers that ever came across this country.
Here's a quote. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. That's Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan had 25 game-winning shots that he made in his entire career. He missed 26. He actually had the ball in his hands at the end of the game 51 times, and more than half of those times, he missed the shot. And he's still, today, most people would consider him the greatest basketball player of all time.
That's an episode on its own right there, right?
For sure. We've had some software companies and other businesses we built have been really successful that people would look up and say, those are really huge, big businesses. But what you wouldn't hear about would be a company that I built called Blosser. Mm-hmm. You know why you wouldn't hear about it? It was because it failed. I spent $1 million and then threw it away. It just didn't survive. It was bad execution, bad plan, my inexperience, whatever it was, and I lost. And it hurt. Yet it led one domino closer to the next thing that we built, which was Brivity.
And I even think, out of that, Ben, we learned a bunch, right? Like one of our developers that worked on that project is kind of a major piece in what we do today, and a lot of the data elements that we learned about in working with Blosser is stuff that we've applied to our business today.
You can salvage things from some of your biggest losses, which might be a lesson in itself. Chad, go ahead.
I was going to say one more loss in a different category that, many of us are going to have the opportunity to say that we've had this loss. I've been married before. Right. And I learned lots of lessons from that loss, which created growth, which now have created for me a much stronger relationship now that I'm in because of the lessons learned from it. I'm going to challenge every one of our audience members to just stop for a second and think about the biggest loss in your life and what you learned from it. And we're going to be posting in our Facebook group, that's facebook.com/group/win-make-give, asking you to share with us the biggest loss so we can hear what came from it, because I want to know from all the people out there. Ben, the next one on our list is losing will teach us perseverance. And I mean, you said we're in a room of losers right now, and I got to tell you, I must be a huge loser because most of my victories come because people say to me, you just wouldn't give up, right? So we learn again and again the ability to recover from losing and just getting right back at it, right? Winning is dependent on being persistent and our willingness to persevere.
Yeah, people think that getting knocked down is the bad part. No, that getting knocked down just happens in life. Not getting up is the bad piece of losing, isn't it?
Get knocked down 7 times, just get up 8, right?
Yeah, you have 2 options when you lose. Become somebody that lays there, right? And says, gosh, that didn't work out as I planned. Or somebody that just gets back up, right? That's resilient, that is unbeatable. Reminds me of David Goggins, right? Or the young lady who lost her arm from
Bethany Hamilton.
Yeah, from a shark attack and went back to become a winning professional surfer.
And they made a movie about her. Right? Go check out Soul Surfer if you want to hear her story a little bit more. It reminds me of Rocky, right? Rocky, I mean, we love it. Come on, let's just admit Rocky's one of the great movie characters. How many times that guy get knocked down? And he just kept getting back up. He wasn't a great boxer. He just had the heart and the perseverance to keep winning.
Well, one of the things that I think losing gives us as a gift is it gives us humility. It teaches us to be humble, to have grace, to be empathetic, apologetic, all of those things. And the greatest leaders and the most inspirational people that I've ever met do not impress me. They empower me. They are out there and you see them, you're like, hey, if that dumb shit can do this, then I can do it. Hey, if that guy can get beat 10 times and he still got back up, I can go get beat a couple times and be okay. These humble examples of losing, right, empower others like us to keep trying. And that's really important.
Yeah, nobody's perfect, right? So we got to understand that nobody's perfect, and we have to have that drive to improve ourselves. And that's what losing is going to do. It's going to keep us humble and make us keep learning, Ben.
A lot of these lessons, you guys, I apply them to my kids. And I've already applied, I think in the last episode, I talked about my boys, but there's a certain element of, innocence in children, right? And so when my son Chase, and he's got a younger brother, right? He's 4. His younger brother Minnie is 3. Chase is not a very humble winner. He's like, he wants to let his brother know and everybody know that he won. And I'm working a lot with him because, with Candyland, right? And Carter will beat him sometimes. I'm trying to teach him, he's going to learn out of those losses humility, right? And I know this kid needs it because he likes to win and he wants the spotlight on him and stuff, but he's going to learn humility out of his losses growing up. And, and out of that will come grace, right? And even when he wins, he's going to be a graceful winner, right? And empathy. And this definitely keeps you humble.
When we lose, it can actually strengthen our relationships.
Yes.
How does it do that?
Well, if you remember in our last episode, we were talking about some of the physiological things that happen. Blood pressure will change, anxiety levels. Bob was mentioning your shoulders hunching. There are certain triggers that we actually put out that other people that are in our immediate, our sphere, our circle, they'll actually be attracted to protect us. It's just natural human instinct to protect us. So it actually will create stronger relationships with those people when we lose, because our body's basically putting out this whole message that I need to be protected right now, and those people will come surround us. Think about what happens when you've had a loss in business. Some people gloat about it. They were never part of that inner circle anyway. Some people run away because their world fell apart because they were just gambling on you. And then there are those people who will have your back 100% to pick you up and keep you moving. Think about when you're sick. Think about when you lose in a contest. Think about when you lose in a relationship, when you even lose a family member from your life. You see those people that are your support system that are just attracted to you to protect you, which then just strengthens those relationships.
Yeah, for sure. Even when I lost my mom, the benefit of losing somebody so close to you like that is it strengthened the relationship that I have with my dad and my sister.
Right.
Because those are the only two people in my family that were still left. Right. There's always a gift from even losing something as important as a family member. Now, losing can make us better leaders, more valuable coaches, and more valuable mentors, but only in one of two scenarios. You see a lot of interviews, podcasts, videos, and people on stage that walk up there and say, hey, I went bankrupt, or I lost, or I screwed up my business. And it's like this sad sob story of how they screwed up, and they're probably going to go do it again. In order to learn and benefit from losing, after you lose, you got to go back and win.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you become a better mentor, leader, and coach is by taking your losses, turning them into wins, and then going out and sharing with people how you did it. You can't just be the guy or gal that travels around banging the rubber chicken on the stage saying, hey, I lost, I screwed up, I ruined everything. That's an interesting story, and we can be empathetic and sad for you. But what we really want is we want to see, how did you turn that around? How did you become somebody who learned from those losses, from all the things that we just covered, Chad, and now you're a winner?
Yeah, and you did a great job being a great mentor to me as I went through those situations, because you were the one who said, good, now go win in all of the areas that you lost. Go fix your health, go fix your finances, go fix your relationships. I lost in a lot of areas, right? And then you said, now you can tell the story, because now people will care about the fact that you lost to connect with you. Now you can be authentic about who you are, stuff that I used to always hide. I didn't want to tell anybody that there was the failure. And then I was able to say, and here's what I've learned from it, and look at how I've been able to win because of these losses, that it's allowed me to have the opportunity to help other people avoid the same pitfalls.
Yeah, people confuse entertainment with empowering people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes your story of being a loser is just entertainment, and we're either laughing at you or we're feeling sorry for you, and it's entertaining, but it's not empowering. It doesn't come back and say, hey, there's actually a real true benefit to learning from what you did and us not doing it ourselves. In fact, you guys went out and found a parable.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Which one do you want to go through that?
All right, so here you go, Ben. And a lot of people may have heard this one before, and I just think it's a great parable.
I hadn't, so
hadn't heard this
that's
one
why
before?
we're sharing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So it's about the ceramic teacher announced on opening day that he was dividing his class into two groups. Okay, all of those on the left side of the studio, he said, would be graded solely on the quantity of the work they produced, and all of those on the right solely on quality. His procedure was simple. On the final day of class, he would bring in his scale from his bathroom and weigh the work of the quantity group. If they made 50 pounds of pots, they got an A. 40 pounds, they got a B, so on and so on. Those that were graded on quality, however, they needed to produce one pot. That was it. It had to be perfect to get an A. Okay, grading time came, and a curious fact actually emerged. The works of the highest quality were all produced by the groups being graded for quantity. Right? It seems that while the quantity group was busily churning out piles of work, they learned from their mistakes. So their pots got better and better, while the quality group had sat theorizing about how to be perfect. And in the end, they had little more to show for their efforts than theories and a pile of clay. Right? Lose a lot, Ben. You end up winning.
You know, one of the things in our businesses, Bob Stewart, that I think really stands out is the quality of our people. We have built a team of winners around the U.S., Canada, Costa Rica, the U.K., the Philippines, some of the best, smartest, and hardest working people out there. And I get asked all the time, like, how do you find so much talent? Well, I hired a whole bunch of turds. Like, I had to sort through a whole pile of turds where I screwed up in order to find the diamonds that we have today. But most people just want to hire the diamonds.
Yes.
And sometimes you gotta flip over a couple turds first. There is value in failing quickly. I read something the other day that said, don't spend a couple years doing something that you could go learn or get accomplished in the next 60 to 90 days. Right? Go fail really fast.
Yeah.
Go screw up quickly. Do it responsibly so you don't ruin lives or don't ruin businesses or ruin your finances, but screw up a little bit faster.
I heard somebody say once, I was at an event and someone had just hired somebody, Ben, and your little mention there triggered this. They said to one of their mentors, they said, this person I just hired, 1 in a million. And in a heartbeat, their mentor turned to them and said, show me the paperwork from the other 999,000. Right? We're all looking for that one. You're right. If they had truly hired or gone through 1 million people, okay, they would have found that diamond in the rough. We're not guessing and getting the diamond on the first shot.
In business, this would be hiring, right? In the military, there's roughly 400,000 people that are in the Navy, and let's say there's roughly 4,000 that are active SEALs. If it takes the Navy 400,000 to find 4,000 SEALs, why are we going to be any different? We have, and it took them 4 million people to get 400,000 quality servicemen and women to go do that, right? There's just a ratio that it takes to be successful. We hope that you learned a lot from our lessons of losing and from the first couple episodes when we talked about winning and what does winning feel like and how do we become winners. As we go further on into the Win, Make, Give series, season 2, we're going to study more winners, more companies, historical, and interview some of the greatest winners of all time. And we hope that you're super excited as much as we are. Chad, how do we end this potty?
Ben, I'm so excited about it because not only are we going to study winners, people, companies, we're going to be having you lead us through some of the ways to win with our time, win with our money, win with the people we surround ourselves with. This is just going to be one heck of a season of winning. So everybody, get ready for it. In the meanwhile, make sure you have joined us on Facebook, facebook.com/group/winmakegive. I warned you already, we're going to ask for your biggest loss and the lesson you learned from it with this episode. Come in there and share it. Be open, be authentic to our group. Let's hear from you and invite a friend to come join you for that conversation and share this episode with them. Until our next episode, remember, do good.